today we're going to be talking with Theo actually again. We had him back on. So if you missed it, we had a previous episode with Theo Wilson. He's studying to become industrial organizational psychologist. The last episode, if you guys haven't watched it, Theo talked a lot about how we are just very anxious and depressed, and especially how that applies to the workplace. And today I want to talk more about how we can apply that to personal life. That being said, just give me an broad view of whenever you're studying, how is the psyche of a modern person?
Oof, that's a big one. I think the modern person is on so many levels a different human than has ever existed.
Really?
We actually took our baby boy to the chiropractor earlier this week, and he was explaining to us why a lot of babies and then eventually adults have weaker jaws than ever before because of our diet, our modern diet. And it changes like your facial structure, it changes the health of your teeth, it changes a whole bunch of stuff. So you got that on the physical end, and then if you want to talk about on the psychological side, if you just want to think about what COVID did to the planet, the amount of people who came out of that we got more mental health issues, and that's not to diminish a mental health issue, those are real things, but there's more of them than ever before. And people might argue maybe there's just more diagnosed, but I would challenge them on that, because just because we know more about it doesn't also mean there can't be more of it, if that makes sense. And so a lot about our environment and social media. We've never had to compare ourselves.
Social media is a really big one, and that's it's I think it's horrible.
Yeah.
And going back to that, it's really interesting because we look at the human experience, and it was relatively consistent for thousands and thousands of years. And it's interesting because in the last 200 years, the human experience has changed significantly, but the human needs and the human biology hasn't.
Yeah.
And so I think we almost see this mixed match of like, our society is advanced a lot, but in a lot of ways we're still the same beings that we were 200 years ago before this. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of needs that aren't being met in that gap.
Well, if you think about that, that means we've advanced, but we've also regressed. If some of those needs aren't being met, especially psychological needs like community and family, we're more isolated than we've ever been, and people might not think it's that big of a deal. Like I met my bride online. My sister met her husband online, but the probability of meeting your person is way higher online than it is offline for the first time ever.
I think it's also just anybody, because the social interactions you have a lot of days, and this is very true with social media as well. It's very focused on who am I connecting with, who am I following, who am I DMing, who am I texting. It's so interesting because I'm going through a little bit of a breakup right now, which has not been fun. But one thing that I was doing research on is there's something about psychologically how you text somebody whenever you wake up and you go to bed. And that is actually an important thing psychologically that people really only get in a relationship. Yeah. And so I think just as somebody who's a single person now, our society also, because it's so socially isolated, we put so much more emphasis on relationships, romantic relationships, romantic partnerships.
Well, you even have people, that's funny that you say that, because I don't know if you heard much about like the virtual girlfriend thing, but there was, before AI was getting big, and I don't know if this is still a thing or now if you can just get get an AI girlfriend agent.
That's horrifying.
But there was, like, you could get a girl online, you'd pay her, and she would just text you good morning and good night or something like that. And it's really funny that you say that, because I think especially for men, I think this is a very tough time for connection. We're not naturally as social as women are. So I think women are always going to try to find their community. And that's tougher than it's ever been too. But for men, at a young age, you're not having to develop the skill set to be able to go out and interact with women, or even develop those strong bonds with other men.
Talk to me about that skill set. So what does that skill set look like? What are young men lacking?
The first image that comes to mind is if you picture a 12-year-old boy now versus in the frontiers of, early America, it's just a completely different life. Like, he's out hunting. He's probably out hunting by himself, depending. Even not to switch times and locations, but even the Spartans, everybody knows their famous like manhood test where you had to go out and spend a night with nothing, and you had to survive the night and kill whatever you had to kill. And then if you couldn't come back, I think with like, with the skin of whatever you had killed, then you just don't come back at all. And compare that with a 12-year-old boy now.
Yeah, where it's
like
different. Playing Fortnite.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the dad of a 12-year-old boy now,
That's really interesting.
Yeah,
I think some of those things give you confidence. My father, he was in the Marines, and he was a paratrooper. He did all these like 30 jumps.
Yeah,
and he
cool.
did have all these adventures, and there's some level of confidence that he always had because he was like, oh, I went out and I did this.
I've done that before.
It was kind of funny because every time we get on a roller coaster, he would just be like, oh, like, this is nothing. Like, I jumped out of a plane. And he always used to say, it's like, there's nothing natural about jumping out of a perfectly good airplane. I was like, that's a great point.
That is a good point.
But I think doing those things that push you and make you uncomfortable, like, gives you a lot of confidence that men kind of just don't have nowadays. And I think that's even made worse because society is kind of attacking masculinity.
Right? It is, yeah. And I mean, so my dad served with the Marines, by the way, too. And he's now, both my parents are in Kenya as missionaries, and they said there's a tribe there called the Maasai where their final test is you got to kill a lion. And that's now, there's a whole tribe of men who have all killed a lion before, and yeah, you're right. Like, it's different if you have to do certain things to survive, but I think our society has progressed so much in some ways that there's nothing left to kill. I mean, I think that's what it really boils down to. As a man, you don't have to kill anything anymore to survive. You can just DoorDash it, which I did for lunch.
Fair enough. Yeah. I think I go back to this quote all the time, and it's kind of funny because it comes from the Fight Club, which is a popular movie, and it's where his alter ego is talking about how the battles used to be physiological and now they're mental and spiritual. And I think that's very true of men are now tasked not with conquering the physiological world, but conquering the mental and spiritual world. Yeah. And I think we live in a society that almost challenges us more so than we ever had before, because we don't have people. We're having to stand on our own shoulders. Yeah. We are having to battle things like lust and these images that are normal in the society that is not conducive for healthy living. Yeah. And so I think the challenge is no longer physiological, but how as men can we step up and face the modern world and still conquer?
What's tough about it goes really deep because in some ways, I'm not going to say technology goes against God's design or anything like that. I think we're creators and we're supposed to. But if you think about, again, somebody hunting mammoths or something like that, they have to do that in a group. You're not thinking about divorce or something like that. Like, I have to kill this giant animal so my family can eat, and also so my kid who's hunting next to me doesn't die. You're going to go home to a much stronger family unit. You're now it's like discipleship. Like, the dad is teaching the son how to hunt. He's sending him out on his own to hunt. So now that boy is more prepared to be a man. Today, there's less fathers. There's less united marriages than ever before. There's not really anything to disciple your son on because in some ways, technology's done so much that you remember parents always used to say, like, don't play video games. It's not going to get you anywhere. It'll get you somewhere now.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Like, it's just a different world. And so I think also more than ever, the difference between generational worlds, the gap is way bigger than it's ever been. Like, the conversations I have with my dad, if he was 31 compared to me at 31, we're in two completely different worlds.
Elon Musk says that everybody assumes that tomorrow is going to look like yesterday. Yeah. And that's just not true at all.
And it's exponentially growing, that gap is.
I think it can be very scary, but I believe that we still have autonomy. I think the fact, and I talked about this last time, but the fact that we have the ability to move things in a positive direction, and you need to keep doing that, even if it doesn't seem like you're going to win or you can overcome all the world's issues, because the world we're facing all these crazy issues, and even as we're talking, it kind of sounds dismal, you know. But if we give into that, it's no good, you know.
So that's a big debate in the psychology world, or at least it was probably in the last century. There were two guys, B.F. Skinner and Albert Bandura. They were kind of on two different sides of this argument. And B.F. Skinner, he believed that the human mind is almost like a black box, and there's stuff going on in there that you can't see, and therefore you shouldn't try to use it to predict anything. Like thoughts and emotions shouldn't be used to try to predict behavior. And also on the other side of that, when you talk about environment, if you can't use thoughts and emotions to predict the behavior, all you have left is environment. So he believed environment was deterministic. Like whatever your environment was, that's how you were going to end up. You know,
which is the nature
versus nurture,
yeah.
Exactly. But Albert Bandura, he believed kind of the opposite, which was that it's not just that your environment determines it. There's like almost like an ongoing feedback between your thoughts, your behavior, and your environment. And so those three things, and I think I agree with Bandura, because it's not just your environment, but it's also not just your behavior, but it's also not just your thoughts. Like it is all three.
It's all of them working together, and I think it is a lot of your environment.
Yeah.
But it's also the part of the equation that is added to that is how you react to the environment. Because I think if we look at that, even just the context of, let's say, modern masculinity, we see an environment that is putting a lot of men down, and you see a lot of men go in that opposite direction of like, you know, the Andrew Taters of the world who are now pushing back on that to an extreme degree. What do you think, and this is a challenging question, what do you think masculinity boils down to? Because I think people are so confused about that nowadays, where it's like, is it I have huge muscles, I have tattoos, like I'm a successful business owner? Like, what is that even? How do you quantify that?
I think I'm going to borrow a Jordan Peterson quote where he said, a real man is not someone who's not dangerous. A real man is a man who's dangerous but under control. So I'm paraphrasing, I'm butchering it a bit, but I like I mentioned about we don't have to kill anything anymore. It's almost this, I don't want to take it to the extreme, but I think true masculinity is the ability to be able to end something, whether that is a life in that situation or an argument or finishing what you start, and having that ability under control. So you're not just reacting like somebody made me mad, I'm going to kill him. But if somebody was putting a family member in danger, you got to be willing and able to do that.
I would add to that of I think it's ending something, but also being able to initiate something.
Yeah.
So you look at business owners, you look at entrepreneurs, you look at people who are conquerors. They saw something in their mind, they saw the world in a way, and they wanted to change it.
Yep.
I believe that for the young generation of men that are coming up right now, one of the things I would want to tell them, and this is something that I'm learning myself, I'm speaking to myself as I say this, is you need to be able to look at the reality around you and make a decision about it and then make it happen.
Yeah.
Because so many people out there are so passive.
Yeah.
Like we're just talking about how abysmal our situation is. Are we going to let it stay that way?
Yeah.
Like, I want to talk to you. Are you going to let it stay that way?
That's good.
Or do you want to do something about it?
Yeah.
And because we can sit around and we can talk about it, but, and that's what I'm doing, funny enough, right now.
Yeah.
But what are
That's
we going to
important.
do about it?
Yeah. I mean, that comes down to really, again, the Skinner and Bandura argument, because you keep extrapolating that out. Now you got to talk about agency. Like if you're Skinner, if your environment affects and determines everything, there's no reason to try. Like the only way to grow is to experience something, and that's determined by if that experience is a part of your environment. But Bandura would say, well, he did some studies on this too. I think there was one with like a doll where he had, I think some adults like get really aggressive with this doll, and he had some, kids watch, and then the kids exercise the same behavior, just to prove that you don't have to experience something to learn something, which means now growth is not dependent on environment. You can grow regardless of where you come from or what you've seen or where you've been, you know what I mean? And I think that's what it comes down to. Is you've heard the concept of a growth mindset, like just believing that something is possible and that you can affect it goes a very, very long way.
I completely agree. I think it's really important. Let's go back to what we talked about of social media and how technology has influenced the modern psyche. What do you think about, what do you think about social media in general?
I think social media was like a nuclear bomb. I think it was like a nuclear bomb. It changed everything. It really did, like more so than the internet even, because now you can be connected to people that you'll never meet. And so in a sense, your environment expanded beyond what's natural. I think that's what changed things. Like part of the depression today, which people are more depressed than they've ever been, is the comparison. I can see somebody that in a life before social media, maybe they were in my life for a season and then I would have never seen or heard from them again. Now I can see exactly what they're doing, but it's not real. It's what they feel is good enough to post. And so they post it, and now I'm comparing my real reality to their perceived reality, and they shouldn't even be on my mind. They shouldn't even be in my life. Like that's what I mean by it's not natural, because our natural orbits would have, gone their different directions, but now they don't have to anymore.
I think that's really important to understand the comparison aspect of it. I also want to push on the social aspect of it, because something that I fall into the trap of, and I realize this, is social media gives you the false promise of a social interaction. Like people go there, I think a lot of times because they feel lonely. Like you open Instagram to see if somebody followed you, to see if somebody sent you something, to see, somebody's story or something of one of your friends, and then you see it. And I think it makes you feel bad because you're not really fulfilling that social need, and then it immediately copes you with gives you, reels and things that make you feel better and like take your mind off of it. And it's this negative cycle. We reach for social interaction and we get disappointed, and then we go back to the cope. And it's almost like it's exchanging it right away. And I think we're seeing more people give into that. And then there's people go home from work now and just scroll Instagram instead of going out with their friends and actually fulfilling that need.
That's a good point. And because you're bored, and it's like boxing. Like you try to block one punch and then you just get punched in the face because your guard's down. And that's happening every single time we open one of these apps. Like they can be beneficial. I don't want to go, try to act like they're all bad, but it's two sides of a coin, and the other side is always there. It's unavoidable. And I think for the modern psyche, especially if in some ways it's underdeveloped, like we're talking about those kinds of skills, just being able to go up to another human and introduce yourself and learn about them and show that kind of curiosity, or being in an uncomfortable social situation and surviving it, we don't have to do all those things.
I want to go back to what you just said of being in an uncomfortable situation, surviving it. Let's talk about anxiety, because I think anxiety and depression really feed into one another. Because anxiety gives you this feeling that things that are ordinarily kind of scary, they feel life-threatening. There's, do you know a guy who did Free Solo? I'm thinking his name.
Alex Honnold.
Yeah, thank you. He had a quote where he was on a podcast, and he's like, whenever I'm up there, I'm facing death. And when I go to the airport, I see so many people who are anxious. And I'm like, you're in a climate-controlled environment. Chances are your plane takes off and lands okay. Like you have food and water all around you, but yet you're almost fearing for your life. And we are so unexposed to real danger.
That's it.
That whenever we are in these situations, we feel like that our brain needs to assign danger to something. Like the biology is not changed, like we talked about before. But now it's just applying to things that are actually not going to kill us.
I mean, it comes down to like, we're not in life or death situations. Like your dad, for example, like we don't experience real fight or flight enough. And when we do, and again, this is not to diminish real trauma, because people absolutely experience that, but there's also a lot of mislabeling of trauma going on today, where people were just in an uncomfortable situation, and then they assign that as trauma. They label that as trauma for themselves. And now every time you do that, it moves the bar, because imagine if you were really in a traumatic situation. I think part of the human experience is that we learn who we are, we learn what our limits are, when we're faced with the potential of our existence ending. Does that make sense?
It's kind of a slippery slope because it's like, do we go get exposure therapy and like put our life on
Yeah,
the line,
yeah.
or like what is a kind of a healthy solution to that in
Yeah.
the modern world of, is that maybe just making yourself feel anxious, like putting yourself in those situations and realizing that you survived?
Mhm.
Like, what does that look like?
I think that's part of the difficulty is it's tough today because it's like we're in a padded cell. You know, there's nothing sharp around us. So even if you wanted to try to hunt something out, it's probably too sharp, you know, like, so I'm not suggesting try to put yourself in life or death situations, but I think the best we can do is not run away from uncomfortable situations, and see it a lot of times as the mirage that it is. Now, again, not to diminish, because for, you know, that person in the airport who's experiencing anxiety, that is very real for them. And for them, based off of the skill set and experiences that they have, it is fight or flight. It is life or death. But being able to push through that, which that's why, you know, things like therapy are really good. Things like community are exceptionally good. I think that's the most natural therapy that we have. I think we're designed for that. That's how you can that's the exposure therapy we're talking about is, and people say things like do hard things or pick the harder path. I think that's why, because that's as close as we'll get. And each time you push past those limits, it doesn't matter if, you know, you had a gun to your head or you were just trying to make it onto the plane. If you push past that, you still learn about yourself. You still grow, and you can still have that same confidence your dad had, for example. Like, I've done this before. I can be okay.
This is a really kind of sick thought that I remember having as a child, but I would feel like really sad or like lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And there was almost a part of me that wished that something traumatic or serious would happen to me, because then I would have the reason to feel the way that I was feeling. And it was almost kind of like a scary thought, because like, I don't want something bad. Like, I don't want somebody to die. I don't want anything, but it's almost my brain was wanting that to justify me feeling this kind of way. And a lot of it comes from just like wanting to justify those feelings. And I think that's why people, like you said, assign a lot of trauma to things that are not actually traumatic, is because they might have felt traumatized.
Yeah.
Now, was that like a objectively traumatic event? I don't know, but people want to justify their experience.
Yeah.
And I think that is kind of a dangerous loop that we get caught in of, you don't need to justify your experience.
Yeah.
Like, there's a Joe Rogan quote. It's like, the hardest thing that you've been through is the hardest thing that you've been through. Whether that's a breakup, whether that's losing your job, whether that's your entire family dying, like it's the hardest thing you've been through. And I think we need to be a lot kinder to ourselves in the modern environment.
Yeah.
Because maybe you are just feeling lonely and it is wrecking your world, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, you don't need to compare that to starving people on the other end of the world, you know?
Yeah. I think that's exactly right. And I think it's just a balance of accepting that the hardest thing you've been through is a real thing, and also always trying to push yourself through that and not force yourself through that. Like, you want to heal. But I think there's also like a heal culture out there today where people, and I'm not saying everybody does this, I got to put caveats on all these things, because some of these things are really real. But you'll have someone who uses I'm going through my healing journey as an excuse to not try to move forward. They're actually, what they're doing is just reliving their trauma, or trauma without quotes, over and over and over again, and they're not actually healing. They're just reopening the wound.
What would you say to somebody who may not even recognize that they're in that cycle? But I think to some degree, we all do that. You know, I think planning is and thinking is actually the best procrastination, because it makes you feel like you're actually doing something. And I think that's very true emotionally with what you said.
I'm super guilty of that.
It's like, I'm reliving this thing over and over again because I'm quote unquote healing from it, when really you're stuck in it.
Yeah. I think, again, the answer is community. I think the answer for most things is community, to be honest.
Define community for me.
So there was one thing when God created the world that he said wasn't good, after he said all these things were good. And he said it was not good for man to be alone. I think that sums it up right there. I think community is not being alone. Now, today you have to work harder to develop that community, and not just action-wise, but it's, again, pushing past those boundaries and maybe being vulnerable. I think we're a much less vulnerable generation or world than we've ever been as well, because you have social media, and you have 10 million people you could interact with
cancel
instead.
culture.
And cancel culture. Yeah, those are all real things, and you have incentives to not try, and then you have real reasons not to try, and so people aren't actually showing their true selves. So one, they don't know who they actually are, and two, nobody else knows who they actually are, and so that ends up with you're just lost.
And I think you're isolated, because here's what I tell you. What does actually know what you are is your Instagram feed knows what you actually are. Your AI probably knows what you actually are.
Gosh,
And so we create these identities for ourselves that are almost secret.
Have you heard about Meta's like brain mapping?
No, that's I know that's about to be horrifying, but tell me about it anyway.
Apparently, Meta can predict what's going to go viral before it goes viral, because they basically create a map of your brain. They can see like your brain. They can see based off of what you've interacted with what lights up, and therefore, like if it was emotional enough, or like how long people are watching it, stuff like that. And they've been able to build these models to basically predict groupthink and say, this did really well because it talked about this for this long. And you pair that with things like, and this is kind of freaky now that I've seen it in person, and I have an iPhone, but the way that an iPhone takes infrared pictures of you every few seconds, now we have a baby monitor, and I have seen it. Like I literally called my wife and I was like, is something going on with your phone? Like, are you taking pictures or something? Because it was just flashing every few seconds. And she was like, no, my phone's just laying there. I was like, okay. So it's literally taking pictures of her face every time she's looking at it, and it's watching where your eyes go. It's watching what you choose. And so, yeah, we are known. We're definitely known. I think that's a good way to put it. Facebook knows who we are. Instagram knows who we are. I mean, I guess those are both marked.
But does your family know who you are?
Probably not.
Do your friends know who you are? Yeah. Does your church know who you are? Does your community know who you are? Yeah. I think I've been so blessed recently there's like this early morning group of guys that like we just kind of started getting together, and I give credit to my cousin who is leading the group, but he's just been so vulnerable, leading it off, and like that has all encouraged us to then become vulnerable. Yeah. And I've realized that is like it's almost like me walking out of therapy every Thursday morning, because it's like we are able to just genuinely be like, hey, here's what I'm struggling with, and here's something that I did I'm really not proud of, and here's something, and it's been so relieving. Yeah. And I think to let those guards down with like the people who are closest to us, and it's not happening anymore. Yeah. And it's really detrimental, because I think with the world we live in, we can very comfortably just kind of be alone and like eat the artificial food and not actually get any real sustenance. Well, I mean, that's the beauty of community, is just by committing to meet with a person or group of people, over time, certain things are going to happen. Like you're going to start to feel a little bit safer because they're not going anywhere. You're going to start to be vulnerable. Somebody in the group will. Otherwise, it's not going to go anywhere, and then as soon as vulnerability happens, it just sets off this chain reaction of growth. I don't think you can grow without being vulnerable. Even if you think about the way nature works, to plant a seed, you got to dig up some soil first to make sure that it roots well. You couldn't just I guess technically you could just drop a seed right on top, but it depends on what kind of plant you're trying to grow as well. How deep you need to dig, and what kind of soil it needs to be in. And we're the same way. Humans are the same way. We have to, for seeds to be planted, seeds of growth, there has to be some kind of digging, some kind of disturbance of the soil. My brother warned me of this for years. Of whenever you graduate college, he's like, it's just not the same world. It's like people just kind of isolate, and they do their own thing, and it's harder to socialize. Yeah. And I just graduated, and I'm on the other side of that. And I just remember talking to someone and being like, I'm just lonely, because you're used to living with roommates, you're living with all these people. And so being an adult, like, what advice would you give to us, who we're handed this world that feels like a mess, we're handed an environment that is not conducive to psychological happiness. Like, what do we do?
Oof, that's a tough one. I think it was Mother Teresa who said, if you want to see the world change, go home and love your family. I think that's where it starts, is figuring out who belongs to you, not in like a possessive way, but who your clan is, and then commit to them. And then also, once you have first done that, because maybe one of the worst things you can do is not commit to your family and then try to commit to other people, because one, your foundation's off. And then two, you are taking away from the people who are supposed to have it guaranteed. You're taking that community away from them. So you almost have a responsibility to them first, which again, for men, that can be a tough thing, because you're out and you're trying to hunt whatever you can get out there. But if you don't go back to the family that you're hunting for, then what's the point of it? But once you've developed that foundation and it's alive, I think then it's a matter of putting yourself in uncomfortable situations. Yeah, I think trying to find you really, that's the hunting of today, is trying to find relationships, and maybe going to places where like-minded people might be, and then being willing to be vulnerable again and introduce yourself. And that goes back to those same skills, because if you don't have those skills, then you're not going to be able to hunt at all. So then you're going to end up lonely and on Instagram.
This goes back to one of the first episodes, but we were talking about how whenever you go out to seek somebody else's good, like people can really identify with that, and it's very attractive.
Yeah.
And I think I would encourage people who are feeling lonely, don't think about yourself. Go out and go to a public situation, whether it be small group, just a coffee shop, and look around the room and stop thinking about yourself for a second and look at where you can find the most lonely person. Yeah. Because if you want to look at it like this, it's like, if you can find somebody who looks lonely, they'll probably want to talk to you, even if you're a little weird or awkward, bet. And so I think, and then you get out of your head, because it stops becoming about you and the perception of you. And now you might actually start a connection. And I love, there's a, what's his name? Shakespeare. He wrote poetry, and he always said, when I'd wake up, I'd try to write 5 bad poems, and I'd realize that a lot of times in that 5 bad poems, I'd actually write a good poem.
That's really good.
And so try to have 5 bad social interactions. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, go up and try to just be awkward, just be yourself.
That's so
You funny. Might accidentally stumble into a friendship.
Yeah. I think that's part of it, is we're all trying to be, because it's such a superficial and fake world. It's very visual. And so we're trying to put on this image of we're perfect, we look good, and that's not real. Like it even now, more and more and more, the ads and whatnot that are out there are not even real people. Now you have AI ads,
but
and
Photoshop.
You used to have Photoshop only,
airbrush. I mean, you see that in like the food commercials. Like if you actually saw, like it's
even,
like glue.
Even the food is airbrushed. Yeah, like nothing's real. It's all fake. And so if you're holding yourself to that standard, then you're always going to be depressed. But if the standard you're trying to hold yourself to is, let me just be real. I mean, to be a human is to fail. Let me try to fail and see what happens. Because in trying to fail, I think that's really good what you said. When you're trying to fail, you're trying something that you wouldn't have tried otherwise. And again, that's how you grow. So, yeah.
That's really cool.
That's a really good quote. I like that.
Anxiety, I've heard it described this way, is just the fact that you can't handle the uncertainty. Human brain hates uncertainty. And so you boil everything down into the worst possible thing so you can be ready for it.
If you lined up those definitions, it's literally the opposite of faith, because faith is the substance of those things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. Anxiety is the fear of things not yet seen. And it becomes very natural to like, okay, I want to be prepared for the worst, so I'm going to assume the worst, instead of I want to be prepared for the best, so I'm going to assume the best. But you have to be rooted in something, though. It still comes back to that, because you could try to, manifest and like, I'm only expecting the best and only the best is coming for me. And that's also not true. Life is life. You could get the worst. So you need to have some kind of anchor that's not swayed by whether you get the best or the worst. And that's where, the Bible and Christianity, and that gets to the heart of the human condition, maybe better than anything else, is Paul, for example, said, I've learned the secret to contentment. Essentially, whether the worst happens to me or the best, I can handle. People kind of misunderstand that verse of I can do all things through Christ. He's not saying like, if I want to fly to Mars, I can't do that through Jesus. I mean, it's not happening. Maybe
you
in
might
heaven.
be able to,
Maybe
but it could be cool.
Yeah. I mean, he could help me do it. Will he help me do it? I don't
Probably
know.
not.
Probably not. What Paul is saying is like, I can handle all things. I can survive all things through Christ who strengthens me, in the context of that verse. Like, I'm not affected if I have a lot of money or I don't have any, if I have a lot of food or none, if I'm being killed today or I'm not, I'm okay, because I'm rooted in something that can contain all of me, my spirituality, my body, my thoughts, my emotions, my environment. It's all containable by him.
And I think that is also a thought where you can kind of flip those words around of it. This might not be the best that I can see, but I have to trust that it is for my best. There's a thinking, and I think this goes along with some Stoics, and Marcus Aurelius, I know, pushes this a lot, but it's the thought that things are prescribed to you. So that the things that happen in your life aren't just random, painful things. They're specifically prescribed to your spirit to form your soul if you let it. And so I think when you look at the challenging seasons of your life, that is for your best. And it's hard to believe that. And because when you get the good things, you're like, oh, this is for my best, but it's also, if you're going to say that's true with the good things, it also has to be true with the bad things.
I remember what I was thinking of before, which was people think that good is being done to them if their business is succeeding, for example, and they think good is not being done to them if their business is not succeeding. And meanwhile, they're breathing. They are digesting food. They can walk, probably. They probably have someone on the planet who thinks about them. That's good. Those are amazing things, whether you have money or you don't. And we know that's true because the happiest people on earth don't live in the places with the most on earth. They actually live in the places with the least on earth. So all this stuff is not necessary.
And that by that mindset, the best that could be happening to you might actually be the worst.
Exactly.
Like you see so many people who get to the top, and
that's what Jesus would say.
Yeah. And it obviously flips. It's what he talks about, the upside down kingdom, but you see so many people who strive for riches and fame, wealth, success, whatever. And getting those things might actually be the worst thing that could happen to you because it could change. I mean, it could change you. I'm a huge John Bellion nerd. I always go on about his music and his ideologies, but there's one song that's called Luxury. And he's kind of like building his way up to fame and it says like, pray with me because I don't want to lose my soul in the luxury. And to me, that was, as a kid, I just thought it was a cool song. But now that I get older, I see that like whenever we even are successful, that is one of the most dangerous places for you to be.
It's like, if you can imagine being in space. When you're in space, there's no up or down or left or right. And you can think you're going up and you're actually going straight down. And that's what's happening. That's literally what Jesus is saying too, is you can gain the whole world and lose your whole soul. You think you are, to mix analogies, you think you're in a spaceship and you're actually in that, like, you remember The Incredibles? The mine guy.
Underminer.
Underminer. You're in his little, you're just going straight down, and that's probably why it feels so hard to do, because there's a lot of resistance going down. There's not much resistance going up because nobody's going there. But it feels, because everybody's going that way, you just assume, oh, that's up, so I'll keep going that way too. And that's not true. And I think that affects people's minds, their will, and their emotions at the end of the day, in a very real way. Because if you have a whole planet of 8 billion people all going straight down, and you're looking around and you're thinking, this is hard. Something feels off. I don't feel like I'm getting the ROI that people say I should have. And even the people who get it say they don't get the ROI. The singers and the Tom Bradys, and why are they still singing about doing drugs? Why is that still the only thing they sing about?
Why haven't they reached their nirvana
Yeah,
yet?
exactly.
And it's because as a society, and that brings us back to the first thing we were talking about, was we are going in a bad direction. And I'll keep on saying that, as like, things are moving in a negative direction. And I press on the young men, the young women, let's change the direction. Like, we don't have to use AI if we don't want to. Like, and there will come a time whenever it's a choice between, do we want to do this or do we not? But if we keep on just taking the easy path, we're going to just follow our way to our destruction. And so I think it's like, cognitively, we need to, as individuals and then as a society, look at the path that we're going and ask, is this where we want to go? And it's like, I can tell you right now, it's not. And it's easier to start now than it is going to be in a year from now and 10 years from now, because it's only going to get worse if we don't do something.
Yeah, that's right. And I think one of the things you can do is, on a practical level, again, just looking inward. Like, you don't have to try to go change people's minds. Like, make a decision for yourself. And even, and maybe especially, because this is the way things are going, where more people will be in relationships with robots than with real people. Those are your deepest relationships. The people, the entities that know you best are not even going to be human. You can make a decision for that not to be the case. It's not easy. It's going to probably take you through some anxiety. But on the other side, you'll develop those skills of being a real man or a real woman that can then start a new cycle for your children or the people in your orbit, to be able to have those skills as well. And that's how the change happens.
I completely agree. And I would just say that you have to start by seeking God, because he will give you the path. He'll give you the strength. You can't do it without him.
Yeah.
So whenever it feels overwhelming, go there first.
Yeah.
But
that's right.
Anyway, this has been a great conversation.
Yeah,
And
as always.
I really appreciate your insights, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same here. I'm always
Awesome.
happy to be back.
Right. Well, thank you guys for just popping in, and hope you guys subscribe, share, do all those cool things so that this message can get out. So thank you. Appreciate it.